Day 35, Friday, 10th of September 2021. Today's Bible reading, 1 Chronicles chapters 6 to 15. Vessels after God's heart that obey God's will. The first 9 chapters of 1 Chronicles is a long genealogy that starts from Adam and ends with David. Reading through it, we see how God's hand sorted through human history. He chose vessels who pleased his heart and were useful for his service. Most of the hundreds of names mentioned in the genealogy are unfamiliar to us. Their appearances were short-lived and were never mentioned again. They left no ripples in the course of history, and yet some were heroes and villains familiar to us, and they left some indelible footprints in history. There are those who rebelled against the Lord, such as Achan and King Saul, who brought bad and miserable ends to themselves and their families. There are, on the other hand, people who pleased God, like Moses and Aaron, Joshua and Caleb, David and his family, and his mighty men, etc. After recounting the genealogy, the author moved to a new theme on the cause of Saul's fallen kingship and his death due to his unfaithfulness to God by not keeping God's word nor seeking after him, and consulting medium for guidance instead. Consequently, God gave the kingdom to David, son of Jesse. 1 Chronicles chapter 10, verses 13 to 14. David, in contrast, greatly valued the presence of God, and he sought every possible means to bring the ark of God back to the city of David so that he could seek God at all times. David was highly favored by God, and God covenanted with him to set him over his house and kingdom forever, promising him a throne that would be established forever. 1 Chronicles chapter 17, verse 14. The New Testament commended David as a man who was after God's heart and one who obeyed God's will in everything to serve his purpose. Acts chapter 13, verses 22 and 36. Today's prayers. God is looking for people in this era who are after his own heart and who are willing to be used by him to transform this generation. Pray that we, even as a minority, would be willing to offer ourselves to act in accordance with his will in this generation. More than 32,000 companies and shops have closed between March to September 2020, and 70% of them were small businesses. Prayed for plans and subsidies of government to be effective, and that small businesses will find creative ways to sustain their businesses. Pray that the Ma Mary groups in Sungai Pelik and Pulau Keri Selangor and those in Negeri Sembilan, Melaka and Johor would open their hearts to Jesus, especially the 5 villages along the Klang River, which are easily accessible to outsiders via tourism.